Welcome back to the show. Now get interactive. You can leave your comments on our social media handles. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We are live on X. And of course, on myjoyonline.com. Now, poverty, lack of education, and interference from persons in high offices, including traditional authorities and politicians, have been identified as major factor working against Ghana's effort at ending human trafficking. According to Deputy Attorney General Diana Asunabadapa, despite government interventions, including the passage of relevant laws, these factors continue to affect her office efforts at prosecuting perpetrators of the crime. She spoke on the sidelines at the National Justice Conference of the International Justice Mission here in Accra.
Government frontline, we have managed to pass the Human Trafficking Act, which is the substantial law, and the related regulations to that law to ensure that we proclaim and states unequivocally our stance on human trafficking, condemn it, provide measures for prosecution, and also together with other government units such as the Anti-Human Trafficking Unit of the Ghana Police Service, also at the Social Welfare Department, even at the Ministry of Labour and Employment Relations. We work with all these government institutions to ensure that we not only prevent, but also we hold perpetrators accountable for human trafficking. And so on the substantial front, in terms of passage of laws, in terms of establishing relevant units, as I've indicated, to help with it. But we also do recognize that the role of other international organizations, NGOs, particularly like IJM, is key. I think I mentioned some of the help, which is commendable, that IJM is giving, ensuring that they provide us with some data, ensuring that in terms of resources, they assist the office, particularly our office in the Volta region, to prosecute some of these perpetrators of human trafficking. Public sensitization is very key, and of course we also need to be very alert, you know, as a community, to be able to report some of these things. And of course, I mentioned largely some of the problems we encounter when we are prosecuting some of these perpetrators is for members within the community to purport to interfere in the prosecution, either through lobbying or luring and through threats of death and other things. I think it's a whole community responsibility on all of us. So government, we're doing our bit, but we relish the continued support of all of us.
Well, meanwhile, the Volta and Oti regions continue to lead as hotspots for human and child trafficking, according to the International Justice Mission Ghana, as they called for community engagement to help reintegrate victims into society. Anita Budu is the country rep for International Justice Mission here in Ghana.
When it comes to trafficking within our borders, the source and destination communities we have identified are within the Greater Accra region, Central region, Volta, Oti regions and Northern regions, also within the Western region. So really we would say that trafficking can happen anywhere. There are some key areas or some key hotspots, and these are the regions that I've mentioned. However, it doesn't mean that trafficking doesn't happen in other areas. I think for all of us, we need to be aware and alert at all times to know that trafficking and exploitation, somebody being taken into another situation and being exploited, can happen within your country, within your neighborhood, and it can also happen across borders. And so people being taken to various countries and being exploited within labor, within situations of sexual exploitation, these all happen in our context here in Ghana. It is very real that quite often the work of our justice sector actors, there are people who seek to interfere in the legal processes, not only community members but also people of influences, and we really need to be able to see how we can halt this and let the rule of law do its work here in Ghana. I would say another part of the challenge that I mentioned earlier is around collaboration, coordination with all our state actors. We heard earlier on the panel discussions how we can improve communication, coordination between the Department of Social Welfare, the police, and the Office of the Attorney General. Again, there has been progress, but we need to move further. But again, within other international NGOs, local NGOs, community organizations, we all have a role to play. We all have different areas where we are specialists in. As part of the 4 Ps, we talked about partnership.
So we will interrogate this matter, but also take you live to Parliament because there is a development there. The Trade Ministry is seeking to lay an LI in the House that will, restrict how cement can be sold on the Ghanaian market. But joining us in the studio now is the lead state attorney for the Volta and the Oti regions prosecuting human trafficking related cases, Andrew Doji Aduku, for more on this very important discussion. Remember also that we'll take you to the court because Richard Jakpa, the third accused in the ambulance trial, is undergoing cross-examination by the Deputy Attorney General. But for now, Andrew Doji Aduku is state prosecutor for the Oti and the Volta regions. And we are talking about child trafficking and the fact that that's making it so difficult for successful prosecution. Mr. Aduku, you're welcome to the post.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Right. So how prevalent is this matter in these two regions?
Well, because of the Volta Lake, we have people being trafficked from various places to the lake to work, to be exploited. And we know because we are also close to the border, we have people who are being trafficked for various offenses. But when it comes to the lake, it's very prevalent. It's a very difficult situation that we do have over there, that we are trying our best as the Office of the Attorney General to ensure that we do one of the 4 Ps, which is prosecution.
And then your focus is on the children, right?
Yeah, the focus generally is on, of the crime of human trafficking, but because majority of the people who are sent for these kind of offenses or to work on the lake, they are exploited on the lake, majority of them are children.
And when we talk about children, which age bracket are we talking about?
So you can have as young as 4.
4 years?
Yes,
and 4 years. Labor on
exactly,
the lake.
Exactly. They are saying as very young, and you would be surprised by the kind of work that they do. And it's a situation that needs a lot of attention, for which the Office of the Attorney General is really making sure that we ensure a lot of prosecution to nip this situation in the mud. In
fact, we've run some stories on, how children are exploited on the lake, and not only boys, but some fishermen are also trading sets for fish in all of these areas, especially in the Volta region and parts of the central region. But again, you are at the center where you are trying to make it right in terms of prosecuting those who are violating the law. And so how is it that do you get the cooperation of the community? Because the communities have always insisted, because of poverty, they are left with no choice than to allow their children to work on the lake.
Yes, I think let me make the first point that the Office of the Attorney General has taken this matter of human trafficking very seriously. So when it comes to even prosecution of human trafficking, we have focal persons for prosecution of human trafficking in the Volta region, the Greater Accra region, we have the Central region, and in all other regions, we are taking human trafficking seriously. So we have built capacity. The office has built the capacity of state attorneys and police prosecutors to be able to prosecute these offenses. So first of all, there's a desk for human trafficking.
Right.
So there's a go-to place when you talk about issues of human trafficking. And all the state attorneys who are employed in the Office of the Attorney General, who especially go into prosecution, are taking through training on human trafficking. Now, on the issue of how we are dealing with it on the ground,
exactly,
we are collaborating with the police to ensure that these cases are expedited. Because the moment you arrest somebody for the offense of human trafficking, you need to put everything together and put them in, you put them before the court in the shortest possible time. And you need to get your acts together, because you naturally will not have a lot of shelters to be able to house these children who have been rescued. And you can have sometimes as many as 10, as many as 20 children who have been rescued. And you have to do the various interviews with departments of social welfare available, and they have also been very supportive. And you put all of these together, and you have to put the accused persons also before court. And you know what happens if you put them before court and they are granted bail,
and
the bail is executed. Of course, sometimes they go to the community. Then you are looking at where you're going to keep these kids. If you do not have a shelter, where you're going to keep these kids, how you're going to feed them. Remember, they are in a new environment. They are going to speak a different language from what they were used to. The routine they were used to, which they thought was very normal. They are not going to be used to that particular routine. So it takes a lot to be able to prosecute human trafficking cases. And I believe the Office of the Attorney General is doing its best in this particular regard, because the records show over the last 4 or 5 years, or even the last 6 years, that we've got a lot of convictions. So we moved from the Tier 2 watch list to Tier 2. And we are doing a lot, and I believe that you are hearing even a lot more about human trafficking.
Of course, yes.
Because we are doing a lot of prosecutions. And we want to say kudos to the Attorney General, who is giving us strong backing to be able to continue this particular work that we do.
So in terms of the prosecution, those who have been successful in getting conviction, what category do they fall in? Are they parents of the case that were engaged in this child labor, or those they were working for? I mean, what kind of people have you been able to prosecute?
We have been able to prosecute majority of the people who call boat masters, including their spouses and others who have transported these kids within the chain of the commission of the crime. In some rare cases, we have had some parents who were actively involved in human trafficking. They gave their children out, they expected monies to be paid, or they were expecting a cow or things like that to be given to them. For those parents where we found that they were involved, they have the intention to let their children go for their children to be exploited. The key word is about exploitation of their children. For those parents, we have been able to prosecute them, and we have ensured that they have had the punishment that they need.
So in terms of the transaction, when, for example, you say that a parent gave the child out in exchange for a cow, does it constitute selling of the child?
So, yes, so literally we say constitute selling of the child. It's not just about giving the child out, it's not about just transferring the child. It's about transferring the child for the purpose of exploitation, whether it's within the national borders or it's across the national borders. And when we talk about exploitation, we are talking about forced labor, we are talking about induced prostitution, slavery, bonded placement, and things like that. And I believe that for most of these parents, it's either they are doing this intentionally or maybe they may be acting in ignorance. But I believe with the advocacy which you are doing, and I want to say thank you for giving us this platform to do this advocacy, that we have passed the time of advocacy. Even though we talk about advocacy, we need to ensure that people who intentionally allow their children to be exploited by making them go and work on the lake in very dangerous and inhumane situations are prosecuted to serve as a deterrence to others. But whilst we also do prosecution, we are talking about how best we can reintegrate these children, because when you do this...
Into society.
Exactly, into the society. So there needs to be a concerted effort from various agencies and from various institutions to be able to nip this in the bud, because we need everybody on board. It's not only the work of the Office of the Attorney General or maybe the police prosecutors to do this prosecution, but we need all on board. You in the media, those with GPRTU, anybody who is involved with children, anybody who wants to see that these children grow to become very good people should get involved to be able for us to be able to nip this in the bud.
But for the parents, I know that ignorance of the law is no excuse. But listening to them, do you get a sense that they've been doing this because of poverty, and that because they are unable to take care of their children, they feel that by offloading them, if you like, to people who work, to go and work as laborers, they are doing them good? And do they pay the parents in return for the work they do for these boat masters?
So the first point I want to say is that any parent who allows his child to be exploited, the key word is exploitation. See, there's a minimum age for light work, and there are certain works children are allowed to do. Anything that you do that jeopardizes the education of your child, the health of your child, the safety of your child, you as a parent, you have a duty to ensure that your children are well protected. So if you're giving your child out for somebody to use to use on the lake in conditions where maybe that child does not even know how to swim, a very young child, go underwater to a disentangle net in water bodies which have tree stumps and stuff like that, then you're obviously endangering that child. So for us, the key thing we look at is that what is the intention of that particular parent? And I get the argument about poverty. But I believe that there are a lot of poor people who are doing their best to be able to take care of their children. So even though we may look at the argument of poverty, but we're also looking behind the poverty. Is this parents just giving birth and allowing these children to suffer so that they gain? Because at the end of the day, if you are getting all these benefits, why are the children not getting, the benefit of it? Why would you sacrifice your child for such a very, dangerous venture?
All right, Andrew, I'll come back to you to ask you about the obstacles you are facing in terms of getting prosecution, and also how many you've been successful, perhaps in the last 2 or 3 years. But let me bring you back to the studio, because I also have a lawyer in the studio, but we are not talking about the ambulance trial. We are talking about kidnapping and child labor, especially on the Volta Lake. Andrew Georgie Aduko is still here with me. So Andrew, before we went on that break to the courts, I asked about the challenges you are facing in your prosecution. We've heard about interventions sometimes by chiefs, by opinion leaders, and even politicians, whilst you are undertaking your lawful duty.
Well, I mean, Elton, that's precisely the case. You get some interferences from some people because, first of all, they don't appreciate that human trafficking is a serious crime. Mm-hmm. It's an international crime. It's an organized crime. And also some think that, well, we can't be influenced. But I must say that the Office of the Attorney General has fared very well when it comes to sticking with prosecution of these particular cases, mm-hmm. and we have not allowed people
this interference to frustrate your work.
To frustrate our work. But I mean, the mere fact that somebody is interfering in your work already is taking your time off to listen to them or stuff like that. And it's generally also the same way with the police who are prosecuting matters of human trafficking. But these are some of the challenges that we face in our work. Aside that also, I mean, the fact that you do not have shelters also poses, you do not have enough shelters, let me make that point, also poses a difficult situation for us where you have rescued a number of children.
And don't know where to take them, exactly, or where to care for them. Because you cannot take them back to the very society you are trying to get them out.
Exactly. And for some of them also, they may have been brainwashed and told that if these people come for you, they are not going to do anything good for you. Mm-hmm. They would behave as if they like you and later, do something to you. They have been brainwashed to think that way. So issue of shelter is another thing. Then one other challenge is the length of the trial, because the system that we have in Ghana means that the person has to come and testify in person in court. What would mean is that if you're keeping this child who has been rescued in maybe somewhere in the Ashanti region or somewhere where there's a shelter, you need to transport this child and bring this child. So if you're looking at the length of the trial,
does it look like a witness protection sort of a thing?
Well, generally what we have is, the system that we have is that the witness must testify in person.
Right.
We probably may have to get to the point where we allow video conferencing testimonies and things like that to be able to help people to testify. Maybe another point I wish to make is that in this particular age, what we can be looking at to ensure that we deal with these matters more expeditiously is what we refer to as a block trial. So a block trial may be a day-to-day trial, or giving ourselves, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even a month to do this. And this can be done if there's enough collaboration between the court, the prosecutors themselves, the various witnesses who are going to serve as the various people who are going to come and testify, and also lawyers for the accused persons, and for those who do not have lawyers, probably
the state providing one for them.
Exactly, state providing one for them, so that we ensure that their rights are protected and to deal with it. So, I mean, these and many more challenges that you face. But I must say that the Office of the Attorney General is doing very well in this regard. Despite all these challenges, we are doing an excellent work with prosecutions.
So I just want to find out, I mean, in the last 2 or 3 years, how many people have you been able to put behind bars?
So with the Office of the Attorney General, I can count not less than 3 convictions. Wow. Not less than 3. And there are trials which are going on. But just as I mentioned, we'll need a concerted effort to be able to get this done. And I believe that once people rally behind the Office of the Attorney General and give us the necessary support, we'll be able to overcome this. We need to get to the point where Ghana is declared free of human trafficking, because the fact that we are even tagged with human trafficking reduces the investment that we get into. Of course,
we are facing issues with the EU in terms of export of our cocoa, because they have clear policy on child labor.
Yes, exactly.
You cannot engage your child to help you in the farms, and because of that, there's danger that some of our cocoa that we export to the European market may be banned. They are clear on these matters.
Yes. So I think the point also must be made that the Attorney General, the Director of Public Prosecutions, and all the regional heads, and even the focal persons on human trafficking are putting a lot of effort. You sometimes have to go just beyond your normal working hours to ensure that you put all of this together. There are times where state attorneys may have to stay late into the night to be able to accommodate these witnesses, prepare their statements, and put everything. Remember, we are not only dealing with human trafficking, we are dealing with all other cases.
Yeah, because yes, I was coming to whether, so in terms of child trafficking and child labor that you are dealing with, does it only relate to what you see on the voter league, or there are other forms that constitute this crime that you've been
sex
prosecuting?
Exploitation, any other form of trafficking.
That people give their children out for prostitution?
For purpose of sex, and people are trafficked. Very young girls are trafficked from other countries, even are trafficked from Ghana to other countries to perform issues of, sex, prostitution and things like that. What do you call hookup? People are told that you're going to work in the boutique. They get there and they realize that they are engaged
not like
in
that.
Forced prostitution. The people take the monies away from them. So
So in this case, the parents, did you get a sense that they were aware of what the child was going to do, or they were tricked into giving their children out to go and work as, maid servants or here and there, and they end up undertaking commercial sex?
So for some of these parents, they were definitely deceived as to what the children, the normal thing, they won't come and tell you that you're going to do this particular work. They may tell you that we are going to offer your child education, we are going to give them a better life and things like that. So there's some element of deception to be able to take the children away. And once we realize that the trafficker used the element of deception, then obviously you can't blame the parent. But when we realize that this parent knew exactly what the child was going to do, we will take the parent on, because the parents, if they are more vigilant, and I want to use the opportunity to urge parents to be more vigilant. If somebody tells you that I want to come and take your child away, investigate who that person is. At least let somebody go and see where the child is going to stay. Visit the child. And more especially if the person is taking the child to anywhere close to the Volta Lake, you should not allow your child to go there, because obviously what is going to happen is that your child is going to be exploited, the person's future is going to be disturbed, and the police will come after you, and the Office of the Attorney General, if we find that there's evidence, will definitely do the prosecution, and the law will take its course.
In wrapping up, so, in terms of the advocacy, you've spoken about the fact that you've done a lot of advocacy, so the education has gone down well with the people, and then the prosecution. These two, has it helped in minimizing the instance of child labor and trafficking, or you think that it is still a major issue that we must focus attention more on it?
Well, I think that's a major issue that we need to focus a lot of attention on. We can do more than enough. The advocacy still needs to continue. The advocacy needs to be encouraged in the various faith-based organizations, on TV, on radio, and various announcements on what human trafficking is. We need to have all of that. And I must say that we even have call center lines where you can actually report cases of trafficking. And
is the number available? You can put it out so that...
Well, unfortunately, I just couldn't remember the number.
Right.
We would get that information to you so that you can put that information across. But the key thing that you need to understand is that the ministry is doing its work, the Office of the Attorney General, together with the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Protection. We are doing our best to ensure this is done. I must also commend the efforts of the International Justice Mission, International Needs Ghana, Expertise France, and all other NGOs who are helping us to get this done. The most important thing we need to understand as a country is that if we are able to nip human trafficking in the bud, then what is going to happen is that we are going to get a brighter future for our children.
Absolutely.
People who are on the lake should be people who wanted to be on the lake, and they are people who should be committed to do whatever they seek to do. We shouldn't subject our children
to this kind of cruelty.
I mean, there are children who have died on the lake just because of this particular thing. And I believe that you, the media, the members of parliament, people who are in charge of various means of transport, the boats, any form of transport, when you see any child being moved, a number of them being moved unaccompanied or being moved by one particular person, if you see something, say something. And when it comes to human trafficking, when you see a child who is being exploited, say something so that we can save that particular child. And that brings me to the Human Trafficking Day that we do have, the Blue Day, coming at the end of July.
Right.
And we want to ask for concerted effort to ensure that we are able to deal with these issues of trafficking. And I must just say, end on this note by commending the Honorable Attorney General, the other state attorneys who are ensuring that these prosecutions are done, the judiciary, which is ensuring that when these cases come, they hear it expeditiously, and all other persons who, in one way or the other, help us to get these things done. We really need a lot of hands on board to get these matters resolved.
And my interest is that we are also able to provide shelter that gives them dignified life better than what they were used to before they were rescued.
Precisely, just as you mentioned, we need a lot of shelter. And in fact, we need to get to a point where in every region we have not less than 2 shelters to take care of these children. And I can tell you, for some of them who have survived, some are in the universities, some are doing great stuff. And I can tell you that a life which would have been lost on the Volta Lake has just been saved just by the efforts of the state. And we as a state need to protect these young ones.
All right, thank you so much for coming to Mr. Andrew Doji Aduku. He is a state attorney for the Oti and the Volta region, and they're doing a very fantastic job. Now we'll take a short